All right, guys, good day and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Sedrick, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And if you're a football family, you have lots of fun going on in your house. And I have a big football fan in the house today. His name is Ty Watson. He's also known as the Doc on TikTok, and I'm super excited to have him. Welcome, Ty.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on a podcast with you.
It's so fun. The miracle of social media is it's enabled me to connect with men and women all across the world, and it's fun to have this bridge because you see people's personalities, you see their quirkiness, you see their passions and their loves. I mean, you're not only are you a diehard bleeding green Packers fan,
You know it. Cheesehead all the
you
way.
know, but you're also, a Navy vet, very concerned about veterans' health and making sure, we recognize the men and women for their service. Most importantly, recognize that we're losing 22 a day,
Yes,
which,
sir.
that is mind-boggling, and it's heart-wrenching, especially being a son of a dad who's served for 20 years, and my brother's currently in the Marines. And so
Semper
that's a big
Fidelis.
that's right, Semper Fi. Boy, he bleeds it too. And in fact, he's on his. I think he's got 3 years left. He's currently stationed in Bahrain, and then he comes back, does like 2 years in Corpus Christi, and then he's done. He's gonna
Then he's
retire.
done.
So then he's done. So let's
Most of
talk
my most
about.
of my time was spent with the Marines, so I know I
Was
can
it?
I can relate to a lot of things he's probably done and been through.
So what did you do in the Navy?
So I was a Navy corpsman, and the way I kind of explain it is, my job is to take care of the Marines when they get hurt or injured and get them to the next echelon of care, depending on, the setting and where we're at. And then I can also be in clinics and hospitals too. So that atmosphere is a little bit different, but with the Marines, we get a little bit more freedom.
Yeah, that was my dad. My dad was a Navy corpsman, and so we bled blue and gold all my life, and so yeah, it's quite an honor. So thank you for your service.
I
One of the
appreciate it. Thank
things
you.
one of the things that I'd like to ask you about, and I asked my brother. I have a whole episode with him back in August. Let's talk about the challenge of being in the military and being married and having a family, because I think a lot of people don't. I mean, we talk about it, but if you haven't lived it, you really don't have the perspective of what demands that places on a family.
Oh yeah, I think to me the one of the if there's any challenge at all is the knowing that when, if we get deployed, if we're out training or, we're at work all the time and our spouses are at home taking care of the wife and kids, is that, you know, our spouses are creating this atmosphere and this regimen and this almost like a day to day basis type thing, a schedule. And we have to almost abide by what they're doing. Because if we try to go in and change what they're doing or change based off of what we feel is right or how, I feel that, things should be done, I can't just go in there and make changes. It throws off the whole chemistry of what, my wife and our two kids have going on at the time, whether it's a bedtime schedule, a dinner schedule, school schedule. I mean, that's just something that to me was the hardest part, is adapting to their, I want to say, time frame and how they schedule themselves. And instead of me just imploring or not imploring, but putting it on them based off of how I think it should be done.
Did that make you feel like an outsider at times?
Sometimes it did. But my wife, her name is Caitlin. She's such a strong woman. And the things that she did to make sure that I never felt that way, and she would put me in my place and still does when it needs to be, you know, but she was very good at, adapting that. And, you know, she would challenge me in the ways I would think and how I would think and what I needed to do to kind of better. intertwined with what they got going on.
Yeah, I know kind of one of the challenges as I look both at my brother, I also think about my experience with my dad. I mean, my dad was, a stand at attention.
Yeah,
You do everything exact and precise. And, for a
exactly.
2-year old, 3-year old, that can be really challenging, right? And
Absolutely.
so bringing this very regimented mindset into a family, especially when you've been deployed or away on training and then coming in and recognizing that being a dad and being a parent and being in a family with 3-year olds, 4-year old, 5-year olds, 6-year olds, regimen goes out the window.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, like there is, and I've noticed it more so after getting out of the military, and I went right into the workforce, and my wife stayed at home. She was a full-time student while taking care of two kids. She went to nursing school. So, but we got to, how do I put it? She set the schedule. She's set everything the way it's supposed to be. And I just kind of, I don't want to say I had to go with the flow, but I really did, and it was when I tried to be, I don't want to say reprimanding to my children, but it's like when I try to be the authoritative, my wife has to pull me aside and be like, look, they're not your sailors, they're not your Marines, they're your children. You need to start talking to them and treating them like as such, and that was kind of an eye opener for me, not only while I was
Mm.
in, but more so when I got out. And as my oldest daughter, who's 14 now, she's, tested my limits many times. But I mean, when I was 14, I was doing the same thing to my parents.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because, on one hand, you're trying to come in and be a support to your wife, and she has set up and she understands more. I think realistically, kind of the personalities and the flow of the kids. And
Absolutely.
when you come in as, this, guy from a regimented schedule and expectation and this whole hierarchy of respect,
Right.
when you come in and you tell your kids to do something and they don't even listen, it's like, wait a
Yeah.
sec, I'm the
Everything's got its
dad.
place. Everyth's got, where it needs to be done. And, when I ask you to do something, it should take me 3 times to ask you, that type of stuff. And, it's, like you really got to, almost, have you seen the Avengers and Endgame? Have you seen those Marvel movies?
Oh
Do you
yeah.
remember? Okay, so do you remember when Hulk went to go get the Time Stone originally from the Ancient One, and she pushed him, and he kind of had this out of body thing? That's
Yep.
kind of how I relate to it when it comes to that. That military mindset and style is the Hulk, and then I need to get pushed out sometimes and look at Ty and be Bruce Banner in a way, and I'm not saying I'm an angry person. I'm just saying that's how I relate to it. There's times where I have to really take a step outside of myself and be
Mm.
the dad and not be that military mindset, and it's something that after 14 years in the Navy, and most of that spent with the Marines, it's not easy to just turn off like that. I got out in 2015 and there's still times where I really find myself falling into that. And, my wife sees it and she knows it and she'll, pinch my arm or pull me aside or, and hey, Ty, take a step back, and remember where we are at. We're not in the military anymore. And it goes back to, treating my kids like children and not teaching them or treating them like sailors or Marines.
I love the imagery of that because here we have a dynamic which you are very blessed with to have a dynamic of having a very strong woman that is confident in herself. She's confident in her role as a mother, but she's also confident in her relationship with you, right? To be able to
Absolutely.
call you on the carpet and you to have the humility to go, you know what? Yeah, maybe I'm being overbearing. I'm being the Marine. I'm being the Navy guy when I need to tap into Ty.
And it's
And I
not always
need
that
to,
easy either. There's times where, I don't, I hold on to my pride a little too long and, and I have to, take a step back and be like, all right, I was wrong, and that's hard to admit, in a situation, where you're trying to parent, your children, and to admit you're wrong to them. My dad never did that. He never admitted it, not till many, many years later. But, that was something that once, whatever the parent said, that was the way the life went. There was no questioning it. And there's nothing wrong with questions, and it's taken me, you know, probably over the last 3 years, that's, as my daughter, my oldest, has kind of grown into a young woman, and to learn that it's okay to ask questions. There's a certain way you got to ask the questions, but it's okay to you're not necessarily questioning what my authority is or what I'm saying, but you want to know why, and an explanation. Sometimes I don't want to give an explanation, but maybe it's required. Maybe it's necessary.
Yeah, I think that's a delicate balance, right? Learning how to allow your kids the space to explore in their mind and in their heart, and trying to kind of create a balance with what you're telling them. They're trying to resolve it in their mind. They're trying to go, is this how I want to live? And that can be tough. And I think a lot of times we look at it from the lens of being 40 years old, and we've already gone through the learning process. We've already gone through that exploration in our own heart of challenging our dad or challenging the authority. And
Right.
sometimes we forget that we went through that process ourselves, and don't allow our kids the same grace for that experience.
Right. And I think that's perfectly well said. Like, you got to allow them that grace. You growing up, when I challenged my father's authority or my mother's authority, the repercussions were a lot different than, what we do in this household, and I'm grateful for that. Like,
Yeah.
the things that, we went through as young kids, and probably, into our young adulthood, we just don't do that anymore. Growing up in the South, I saw a lot of friends that things got handled quite a bit differently, and it may still be handled that way now. That's not my choice. Parents, I'm not giving parental advice. I'm just, things that I saw when I was a kid. And there's times I've caught myself, when I was younger, this is what would happen if I were to speak to my parents this way, or if I acted this way. And I try not to say it out loud, because that's not the way I want to raise my kids. I want
Yeah.
to do something differently. I want to be better than what my parents did for me.
Yeah. And I think it's tough reconciling, in some respects, it's tough reconciling how you were raised, that we don't put our expectations on our children's because that's what we were expected to do.
Right.
And being able to take the good out of what our parents did and implement them in our life, but look at those aspects that we think, we can do better for our kids, and being humble enough and being determined enough to go, I'm going to do this different than my dad did. And that's okay, right? It's part of building on the foundation that we were given. Or if
Right.
you didn't have that foundation, going, all right, this is what I'm going to try to do in order to raise my kids, and most importantly, connect with them so that they feel loved, respected, and honored, and can grow productively.
Absolutely. And I think that it's one of those, like, how to, I sometimes I struggle with words when I write it down. It's easier, when the expectations that were laid on myself at such a young age. I used to watch my younger brother and sister, when I lived with my mom. My parents were divorced, and living with my mom, I had a younger stepbrother and sister that I had to take care of. So it was difficult at times to know that those expectations, and I don't try to put those on my oldest, and sometimes I think I fail at that, which is okay. You learn from those mistakes and those failures. But I want her to be able to have a childhood, and to be able to grow up and not feel like she's an adult she's a 14-year-old kid with adult responsibilities, because that's just not fair.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You're a dad of two girls. I mean,
Yes.
so let's talk about being a dad of girls, because that is a different animal. I have four boys and I have two girls, and they came at the end. And I can tell you, it was a completely different experience.
Well, there was, an example that I'll use is, like I was trying to talk to my daughter about something, my oldest, my 14-year-old, and she was just, giving me pushback and kind of an attitude. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why aren't you telling me like she's looking for my wife. And then, I talked to Caitlin about it. She's like, she just needed help with some, women's stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, next time, tell her, Dad, it's mom and die stuff. It's girl stuff. Just leave me be. And I'll be like, all right, whatever, I'm done. It's girl stuff. Understood. That's all you got to say. But she, my 14-year-old didn't understand how to express that, and she was getting frustrated and I was getting frustrated. And then she got angry and I got angry. And when all in reality, she just needed her mom for mom stuff, and that's hard. I mean, like as men, we just will never experience the things that, a 14-year-old little girl is going to go through. And
Yeah.
when you want to be there and help and be that dad and be the supportive one, there's just times that you just can't. And, it's hard to realize that and hard to grasp that sometimes, because there's nothing else you want in this world than to make sure that you're taking care of your kids, especially my daughters. I'll do anything for them, but that's hard to let go of, I just can't help her with this. This is something that mom has to do.
Having the humility to be able to receive that message, it's tough, right? Because we as men have a tendency to want to just jump in and fix,
Right.
and in that desire to protect and serve and love, in the act of actually repairing something, sometimes we're pushing our kids away, especially our daughters.
Right.
And it's been challenging for me because I have two diametrically opposed personalities in my girls. I have one that is a rough and tumble. She plays D1 volleyball for UVU. I mean, she will wrestle and run with any boy any day. And then I got my other girl that is all about fashion and nails and doing photo shoots, and she's working on being a model, and
Oh
the
boy.
way I communicate with them it's been really challenging for me, because it's easier for me to talk to Kaylani sometimes because she's rough and tumble. She's like very competitive. She wants to get in there. She's
Right.
no balls dropped kind of attitude. And Cynthia, she wants to talk through things, right? And boy, when she's in the mood to talk, I just got to go, all right, get ready, just sit down, because we're going to be here the next 2 hours, right?
Right.
and and learning how to walk through those personalities and learn how to dad in the way that daughter needs me to dad has been humbling. It's been challenging. It's been frustrating. It's been beautiful, right? But what I've learned is that when I've disciplined myself, because a lot of times, especially since she'll come to me and she'll just be unloading about this experience with this boy or with this girl, and I'm just going, oh, the girl drama, right? But when I just shut my mouth and listen and give responses when it's needed, a lot of times she just needs to be heard. She needs to be felt, right? She doesn't need dad to fix it. She just needs to know that dad loves her and that he is hearing the concerns of her heart. And that can be really tough for some of us dads, when we don't take the time to just be present.
Yep.
But and when I say just be present, I think a lot of men are just, oh, I'm here and I'm in the room and I'm giving the facade of listening, but
Right.
I'm not really listening.
No,
I'm not really connecting.
And I'd say probably over the last year to even probably 6 months, I've learned to be, as a leader in the military, you're told, to be intrusive, and get to know your junior sailors and make sure that you're the leader that's there, that they know is there for them, and you can't be intrusive with a 14-year-old girl. I mean, you just gotta, every now and then I'll poke my head in the door and, hey, how are you doing, baby? Okay, I love you. Just want to make sure you're doing all right. And then we get to talk when she's done with volleyball practice or her volleyball game, and we start talking sports, and then it's like she really opens up, but she doesn't always have to talk just because I want to talk. And I just kind of like, I've learned to give her space, and that's probably another big hurdle of mine, is not to be so intrusive with my kids. My 9-year-old, she'll come and talk my ear off for hours if I let her, but my 14-year-old, she's just, Dad, I just want to read and do my thing. And if I need to talk, I'll come holler at you. All right, sweetheart. I love you.
Yeah. That can be really challenging when you're trying to be an engaged father. And
It is.
sometimes
It's hard. It is very hard.
it's sometimes the bet, and it takes discipline. It takes swallowing your pride and biting your tongue and not go, but I just want to be with you. I just love you, instead of
Yeah.
going, I'm here for you when you need me.
Right.
And if you consistently show them that you're there when they need you, when it's critical, they're going to come to you every time.
Right. And that's, and like being, I don't want to be overbearing to the point where she feels claustrophobic, but I want to be present enough where she knows, like, if she ever needs anything, Daddy will take care of it. I would do, even I was, she may not understand it now, and my 9-year-old probably wouldn't either. But when I first got out of the Navy, I got out in July of 2015, and I started in the civilian workforce in August that same year. I had probably a 3-week time period where I wasn't working, but I was working nights, at a trucking industry, where I was working 12-hour shifts, 5 days out of the week. And when I was home, I was sleeping. I maybe got a day. And then even later on, when I was a supervisor, it was even harder. And I missed a lot of those things that, I should have been present for. And they may not appreciate it now, but eventually they'll understand, that I was doing everything I could for them and for my wife, as she was a full-time student. I just, and I know it's about the whole dad thing, but, without my wife, I have no idea how I would have been able to survive. I mean, it's just, to be a full-time student and to take care of 2 kids during the COVID period when kids were staying at home for school. I just don't know how she did it, and while I was working nights and she's going to school full time. And then thankfully my 14-year-old, you hand her a book, she reads it once and remembers it. She's so damn smart. She's already knows that she's smarter than me. But it's like, I commend my wife all the time about it, and I tell her how thankful I am, and how proud of her I am, and all her hard work has paid off. And now we're kind of switching those roles where, I'm kind of staying at home. I still work. I'm just not working for that trucking company anymore. So I'm home more, and I get to see, I get to take my kids to school every day and, see their volleyball games and see, be part of their lives now. And that transition's been hard for everybody in the house, but it's a good transition. And I appreciate it because I get to see my kids more often now.
What has been challenging about that transition?
I think a lot of it is, my wife is working nights, so the woman that my 2 children depended on for the last, 5.5, 6 years while she was home, that's who they went to. And so they're still getting used to me being here and being the one that they can depend on, and, reminding me of things. Like, I forget a lot of things, and my wife has to constantly remind me, hey, don't forget this. We write it on the calendar. And, it's taken a while for my 14-year-old to pick it up, but she's finally did. She's like, Dad, don't forget. And she'll send me a text message, in a break at school. Hey, Dad, don't forget this, or hey, Dad, don't forget, we got this after school today and I need a ride. Don't leave me here stranded. And, it's, so, I mean, like, I can see how that dynamic has shifted a little bit, but at the same time, it's kind of melting all together in a very good way. Before, there was a lot of push and pull and, fight back on both of us. I mean,
Yeah.
I come in, it's my way now, but in reality, that's not the way it needs to be done.
Yeah. That those transitions, as challenging as they can be, they can really create opportunities for us to connect on a level that we never had opportunity before
Right.
and never imagined. And as tough as they can be, I was listening to I'm listening to the book "Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins, and that book is just amazing. And he said, it's interesting because in the most challenging times in my life, the ugliest times in my life, that's where I've seen the most beauty. That's where I've seen the most growth. And, as I look back with my kids, I mean, there were some really challenging times in our family, but I
That's
wouldn't
so that's
change
so
those.
powerful. That quote that you just said. I mean, I've never even thought of it like that. But you think of those challenging times, you think very negative. And I apologize to cut you off, but I mean, like, just
No, it's fine.
the emotion that you can get from that, and just like the whole. Let me switch my perspective just a second. At your worst, to be able to see some of the most beautiful things that you've created or created around you. I mean, that's holy man. That's a big. Let's talk about seeing everything in the most positive light as you can. And
Yeah,
that's some powerful stuff.
when I look back, in particular on the last 3 years of my family's life, I mean, they were the most, they were some of the darkest moments we've experienced as a family. But I tell you, I would not I would not trade what it did for our family and to our family because that experience, it seared our hearts together. It unified
Absolutely.
us in a way that we had never been unified before. And while that season was really dark and it really stretched our faith, it really forced us to lean into each other. The beauty that came out of that into our family, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I mean, we've got some situations that we've done in the last probably 2 years, especially with COVID, that I would have to most certainly agree with that. I mean, like the independence that my daughter gained from having to do her homework at home and that e-learning and her ability to kind of she grew over that last year and she realized a lot of things about herself and I saw her confidence grow and my youngest missing you know her friends from school being a third grader and a fourth grader and seeing her imagination grow and her develop some very artistic thinking and skill sets and like both of them have just blossomed over the last 2 years during that whole COVID crisis stuff. And it's such a good thing to see, and at the time I was working. So, and I kind of caught the back end of it, but I see it now more when I look back and think, I'm like, man, it was so hard for them, but they have really grown and shown, my oldest in true maturity that, I didn't expect, but she really did, and I'm proud of both my girls, but I mean, to go through that at their ages and to be able to come back out on top and be so confident in themselves and their abilities, you can't teach that. And you can just hope that it just happens in a natural way. Unfortunately, it was an unnatural way, but to see them come out stronger is just amazing.
Yeah. So, what have you discovered about yourself in being a dad?
What have I discovered about being my son? You know what? That no matter what I do, there is nothing I can do for my kids that will be perfect. And I need to stop
Mm,
trying to be the perfect dad, because I feel like I've missed so many years with being in the military and then transitioning into a different workforce. I've always felt like I've overcompensated or tried to overcompensate for those times that I missed. And I really don't need to, I don't have to be the perfect dad. Like we talked about earlier, just let them know that you're there and, not just being there, but let them know you're there, and I don't have to be constantly in their face for that, try to overcompensate for the time that I missed, but just being there for them now, but I don't have to be the perfect dad. I just got to be dad.
Yeah, I often tell my kids, I'm like, look, you guys straight up know I am not the perfect dad, but I do try to love you perfectly.
I like that.
And
I like that a lot, actually.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
gonna steal
like,
that. I'm gonna steal that line.
yeah, please do, because it's like I recognize dad's got flaws. Ashton's just walking by and he's nodding his head. Yeah, dad's got flaws. But there's no way any of my kids cannot and would not tell you that dad doesn't love them, right? And he's not doing what he can to be a little better every day. He's not perfect, but I'm trying to do what I can to make them feel loved, secure, and that they have the foundation to fly. I always tell my kids, I've raised you to fly, not the
Right.
nest. So go show me what you can do.
I,
But
I,
you always have a place to nest.
that's true. And I think that one of the, I don't want to say it was necessarily a challenge, but more of the enlightening things is that, one of the biggest complaints that I had growing up was that my parents, I felt, never listened to me, and I heard that from both my daughters at one point, and I just kind of had to take a breath and be like, wait, they're saying the same things I did, and as much as I want them to learn from me and from my wife and to take that knowledge and grow, we can learn a lot from a 14-year-old girl and a 9-year-old girl, and that's taken some time to learn, and accepting that my kids can teach me just as much as I can teach them. Because growing up, there was only one way. You were learning dad's way or mom's way, and whether or not you liked it or agreed with it, it was going to happen regardless. But now it's different. I want to be able to teach my kids to grow, but I want to grow with them. And there's certain perspectives that, especially as a 14-year-old teenager, that she's going to have that just won't match with mine. And I want to be able to grow with her at the same time.
I love that. I want to grow with her at the same time because as I was listening to you, I was thinking about the image of being refined, right? And I was thinking about when I got married, boy, I had all this love and this excitement and passion for my wife, and I'm going to be committed. We're going to do all this. And it was like being thrown in the furnace of love, right? And you talk about refinement, man. Your wife has a way to truly refine you, but it's like kids come along and it's like all of a sudden you're being pulled out of the fire and you're being pounded with a hammer.
Yeah.
And it's like, are we malleable to these experiences that refine our character, that refine our ability to be better husbands and better fathers? Looking, if you were, to give some pointers to a dad, what are the things that you think are critically important that a dad do with his kids?
Honestly, I think the hardest thing for me, and I think for a lot of people out there, is to listen. Not just hear them talk, but listen to what they're saying. I got to give time to allow my child to explain herself or speak for herself or give her opinion. I got to be able to listen, and sometimes you got to read between the lines and listen a little bit more intently. But growing up, I didn't have to listen. I had to listen to my parents. They didn't have to listen to me. And to me, if there's anything out there, it's just listen to what your kids are saying, and everything about them, their conversations. She could be in the other room talking to my wife, but I'm listening to what she's saying, and that to me is probably the most important thing that I have learned over this, I would say probably the last couple of years, is I've had to adapt to that and learn that trait that I never thought I really had to before, but just listen. To me, that's so important.
Yeah, I was having a really good conversation with my daughter Cynthia. Actually, it was on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this very, very thing, because I asked her what her recommendations were for dads, and she said you need to listen. And it really made me, because there are times when I haven't listened, and it's like the impression hit me. It's like, look, dads, a lot of times you're speaking and they're listening, but they're not receiving.
Right.
And the reason they're not receiving is because your demeanor, you're demanding, you're pontificating
Right.
your viewpoint instead of listening to what's in their heart. And when we can turn that truly to listening, not just with our ears, but with our heart, we can connect in ways that we never thought possible.
And absolutely, and I agree totally with that. As I've learned that trait, we always talk about how men have selective hearing, but as you learn, that trait, and I've learned that trait over the last, like I said, last couple of years, especially with my oldest, it's made me a better person, because listening to my wife explain to me how I reacted, instead of being reactive, just listen to what your daughter is trying to say, and instead of just jumping down her throat right away. It's like,
Yeah.
you're right, and that's even harder to, admit that, she's going to see this and listen to this podcast and be like, see, you've already admitted, you publicly admitted that I was right. You can't take that back.
Yeah, I have to eat that humble pie sometimes too. And that's okay. That's part of growing, right? Is part of maturing, and it's part of becoming a family. And you have been blessed with an incredible woman to share your life with. I've been blessed with an incredible woman to walk with as well. And I'm eternally grateful for that, because I don't know how single fathers, single moms do it. I mean, there has to be an inner strength that fortunately I haven't had to tap into like they have, but to have that inner strength, that inner fortitude driven by love and purpose to care for your kids, you have to give them mad respect. And at the same token, we have to be grateful. I mean,
Absolutely.
grateful to be able to walk with women that are walking side by side with us, because there are many families that don't have that blessing.
Right.
And so one, I want to give tribute and thanks to your wife.
Yes.
But two, I also want to let the men and women that are walking by themselves, dude, hands up, hallelujah, hooray,
Absolutely.
five fives,
Mm.
because you are having an impact in extremely difficult challenges. And I want you to know that I personally, and I can tell Ty does as well, we have mad respect for your devotion and commitment and love. And thank you. And keep pushing, keep digging into your kids,
Right.
because as you lean into your kids, they will feel your love. Even if you're working late hours, double shifts, whatever, they're going to see and feel the love that you have in their lives.
Absolutely.
So.
I couldn't have said it any better.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. I mean, I try to keep these at 30, and we're over 30, but
That's fine. Hey, when the
you,
conversation starts going in a good direction, it's hard to stop. So I appreciate it having me on here, and I'm absolutely honored. I can't say that enough.
no, well, thank you. And you guys that are listening, go connect with Ty Watson out on TikTok. I mean, he's got a great channel. It's at @the_doc. I mean, he's football, he's vets, he's geeky stuff like Batman
Yeah.
and Marvel characters, and that's me. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, we're already connected. It's like, and it's just super fun. You're doing lip syncing, and it's
Yeah.
just fun.
It's
And
all
and
over
I
the
think,
place. Yeah.
but I want to close on something that you shared today. In fact, maybe I should just let you share it, because you were talking about feeling like you were in a rut as a man, as a dad.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about my post from this morning.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so, I was just, I was in a mindset in a time frame where, or a mind frame where it was, I just felt like it was the same thing happening over and over and over again. I was just going through the motions. And, I reached out to somebody, a friend of mine, and he asked me, he goes, "What are you doing to fill your bucket?" And I had no clue what the guy was talking about. You don't realize what your bucket is, what you do for yourself to make you happy, and whether for me, it's, comic books, reading, movies, TV shows, music, and I was like, man, when's the last time I did something like that? And I went out and got a book. And James Patterson, I love the guy. He's one of my favorite authors from his first book and many others. But I needed to fill my bucket, and once I started filling that bucket, it just kind of it changed my whole mindset. It made me feel fulfilled. A simple book filled my bucket, maybe not all the way, but it got me out of that rut. It got me out of that, dark mindset, or, whatever the case may be, and so my question to the people at the time on my post was, what are you doing to fill your bucket?
I love that. So, guys, give yourself permission this week to do something to fill your bucket,
Absolutely.
because it really does make a difference. And
Yes, sir.
me filling my bucket is listening to podcasts and working out with my wife. I mean, those are the big things that I do. Um, but I want to thank you again for joining me on this conversation. And you guys that are tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And we will check you same time, same bad channel, just next week.
Sounds
See
good.
ya.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother.
Have a good one.